Welcome to the Art and Technology Podcast at digitalsculpting.net, a fireside chat where innovation, creativity, technology, and science meet.
Welcome back to the Art and Technology Podcast. We've been on a bit of sabbatical, but we're back with some fervor. I am your host, Brigitte Mongeon. The resurgence in podcasting is due to a new book titled 3D Technology in Fine Art and Craft. Today, we begin the exciting adventure of interviewing many of the artists, craftsmen, vendors, and others who are featured in the book. Our tagline for these podcasts has always been a fireside chat. And in the up-and-coming podcast, you'll get to know some incredible guests featured in our book. Artists and designers share their inspiration, tips, and tricks. We certainly can't put all of the information in the book, but we do invite you to stay tuned and get to know these individuals in our future podcasts. Today, however, the tables are turned, as not only do I interview my first guest, but he interviews me about the new book and what to expect in these coming months. And what a great way to get started. We'll be interviewing Bob Titsch from 3D Printer World magazine, editor-at-large. Welcome, Bob.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And I'm so excited to have you here. Tell me a little bit about how long 3D, it's an online magazine, so how long it's been in existence?
Sure. The webzine has been in existence since, I think, February of last year. So it's only been about 14 months. We started development a little before that in 2012 once we actually got exposed to the market. My brother Mike, who's an editor on the website, bought a 3D printer and started tinkering around with it. And we've been in media and technology for many years. And once we got a hold of one, we kind of said, holy cow, that was right when all the hype was really starting to accelerate with the market. And so we decided to launch the webzine online and plan events also to serve this market and help educate people about the utility of 3D printing, whether it's in a professional or personal context.
Well, it seems to have a tremendous amount of information in it. I mean, whenever something new is coming out, I always see it in that magazine. So how often do you send out publications?
Well, actually, it's not. Since it's a webzine, we intend to do print publications, and we don't in the future. We haven't done one yet. So it's just strictly social media. Every story that we publish online is sent through Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and all the rest. And we're basically just inviting people to come. Lots of people just check in on the site every now and then, or even daily sometimes, just to see what the latest is. As far as issues go, we'll be doing some print and electronic hybrids in the future that are special themed issues. But at this point, it's just, we get about 50,000 unique visitors per month. Last month we had more than that, but I'd say that's probably the average. And, it's been growing considerably since we debuted about a year ago.
And all of the news is just up to date, and it seems like as soon as I see it from somewhere else or before I see it from somewhere else, it's coming out with y'all. So it's really, it's great. How does somebody find out how do they hook up with being able to get your information from your e-zine?
Well, if they go to 3dprinterworld.com, they can check out the website and then also register. All that's required, I think, to get our weekly newsletter, as well as any sort of content that would be behind a firewall on the site, is to just give us their name and email. It's very simple. And then, they can just check in or follow us on Facebook, what have you. Also, 3dprinterworldexpo.com is our expo site, which is actually being rebuilt right now and will be relaunched again in the beginning of May. And it will have information on our various events, such as we're doing one in Seattle, an Expo and conference. Of course, you participated in our inaugural conference, which was awesome to have you there. And we're taking that show on the road to Seattle as well. It was in Burbank in January, it'll be in Seattle August 22nd and 23rd. And then we're going to be doing Burbank again next year. We also have some other events planned that will be announced on that particular domain as well.
Yes, thanks for inviting me to speak there. It was really great. If you missed the Burbank conference, it was I think I don't even know how many people you had in attendance there. Do you know? Do you have a tracking record?
Yeah, it was like 3,565, I think. So yeah, we were really pleased with the turnout. It was, I think we had more 3D printers under one roof than has ever been situated in an event, and great engaged people there to see printers ranging from $300 all the way up to the many tens and hundreds of thousands even, and also some of the spectacles. Of course, you participated in the art gallery. We're really fortunate to have your participation with a 3D printed version of your Tiger, which hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about a little bit. And then we have several other sculptures from various artists who use 3D printing technology. And of course, we had our architecture pavilion and our medical pavilion too, which highlighted the various applications in those industries, which were quite exciting.
So when someone wants to go or thinking about going to one of these, they just check with the website, and then they can sign onto an email list or something that they can find out more information?
Sure, absolutely. Just 3dprinterworld.com or 3dprinterworldexpo.com. We often, the same announcements often that are related to events will go on both sites. So if somebody just checks in with us every now and then, they'll see whatever the latest announcements are, and such as hopefully we're going to talk you into participating again in future events.
Yay. I loved it. I really, for me, it was great because my background's a little different in that I come from both the fine art and the technology background. So I love being able to mix those. And I'm not the only one, because there were quite a few attendees that came up to me afterwards and said, I'm so glad that you're here and that you're representing this area. And so that was great. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of people and a tremendous amount of information. It seemed like you had quite a few speakers there, so everything was covered.
Yeah, there was I think it was a great vibe too. I think just we wanted to show the sort of spectacle of all the range of uses in 3D printing, and of course there are artistic visions of people like yourself and other artists there. That they can be manifested in a physical format as opposed to just digital is really exciting. And we really did enjoy the art gallery, and having you there to teach others who aspire to do these sorts of things was really terrific, and other artists too. And so I think what really, we're convinced that a new generation of designers and creators and manufacturers is developing as a result of this technology. As you know, the technology has been around for 2-3 decades and used in a lot of different industries and manufacturing and so forth. But when the personal printers started to get more attention, it really, fueled expansion. And lots of businesses, lots of small businesses out there, lots of professionals are now only discovering how they can use 3D printing to customize products, to create products. I mean, we got stories of people, artists themselves that are monetizing their work using 3D printing, and you spoke to that at the event. We have, guys making fishing lures using 3D printing and profiting as a result. We had an entrepreneur that told his story about how he used a printer that cost less than $1,000. He was totally self-taught and he ran an electric skateboard company. He started making wheel hubs for his skateboards using ABS plastic and a 3D printer. And at first he was just going to prototype using it, but then he started playing around with post-printing treatments and made them so sturdy that it was actually a product. He would just sit there. It's on his desktop or it's on his, credenza in his office. And he would just run a cycle of print, and he'd have 9 new wheel hubs sitting there a few hours later, and they would actually ship those to customers. So I think there's a lot that 3D printing has to offer, and people are only beginning now to understand and discover how they can use it to their benefit. So it's really cool to be a part of it.
And I think, as my saying has always been, you don't know what you can do until you know what you can do. And until you start to look at all of this technology and figure out what it can do, and then you can fit it into your own workflow. And that's the difficulty. But I really liked what one of your keynote speakers said there, and that she said, some people think it's just a press of a button, and it's not. There are a lot of different things that you need to do to be able to get a product to come, from 3D printing, to be able to get it into a physical form. And I think that's one of the reasons why I decided to write the book on 3D technology and fine art and craft, is because I was stumbling around trying to figure all these things out and asking the vendors, please supply this, this, and this. And they weren't. So I figured I've got to write this down somewhere and give everybody a step-by-step process so that they can walk through it,
Oh, yeah, it's really needed, too. I mean, I think we're on the same page in that the content will really be the driver this evolution. And right now, it's not. I mean, if you don't know CAD design or you don't know how to design using whatever software programs, you have to go out and get designs from other people. And so as the market matures, you're going to see more people learning from books like yours, for example, or you teaching at conferences how to do it themselves. But also you see people that already know how to do it are going to be creating more and more designs that they'll be able to sell. And in many cases, you can go to sites where they're given away for free, and then you have items to print. But what you're covering is so important to the market because the more that we can educate people on how to utilize the various software and technologies that are available to them, the faster people will adopt 3D printing and make it useful.
And in turn, the more people use it, then the lower the cost is, the price is, and the vendors become, you just end up having more to work with, which when I first started studying this years ago, there wasn't, I remember seeing it in SIGGRAPH, and there was just a few places. Then Shapeways came about, and now you can get, whatever you want printed online, or just about whatever you want printed online through some of these companies. And I think that's the other thing, is that some people realize or think that they need to have all sorts of education and all sorts of things to be able to get something 3D printed, but the cost is going to be, over and above what they can afford. And it's
right.
not. You can get free software, and which the book talks about, and you can, some of these programs and what you can print in, you're printing for pennies. It's really astronomical what can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to ask you, can I ask you a few questions about some of your projects and the book?
Sure, this is a dual interview, because nothing like interviewing an editor, because they're going to interview you back, right? That's great.
Right. Well, it's hard to, without showing people what it was, it's hard to really get a sense of just how magnificent either your print was of the tiger that was at the show. It was displayed in our art gallery. But I know that, this was a significant project that you took on, and the scale was just absolutely amazing originally. And you actually used, I don't even know how you did it, but you turned that particular piece into a 3D printable model, which we then had printed locally in Los Angeles for a Burbank show. If you could tell us just a little bit about the Tiger project, and also, the challenges or process of creating a file, from what was like a sculpture that you had done that could be 3D printed, that would be terrific.
Well, the sculpture was created for Grambling State, Louisiana, and it was actually a 15-foot tiger. Depending on what press release you read, sometimes it's a 20-foot, sometimes it's a 15-foot. Anyway, it was a huge bronze tiger, and I created it in the computer using a variety of programs, one of which would be ZBrush, would be the main program. And I've been using this process for a while now, where I'm using the digital technologies, and I pretty much started both with creating the book and doing my studies and getting into the research of 3D printing, because after 30 years of sculpting, I started to have hand problems, and I couldn't hold a business card between my two fingers. And, I had great Popeye forearms, but I had ruined my hands and had to have surgery on them. And so my husband said, you might try digital technology. It might be able to extend your life as an artist. I'm glad that I have my hands back, but I am also very glad that I have the 3D technology, because I think it's really going to extend my career as I age. And I've heard other artists say the same thing as they get older. I talked to a gentleman who's been using digital technology for a very long time. I think he's in his 70s, and he's working with large metal pieces. And he said it's much easier to fabricate them using the 3D technology than it is to, try to lift and hoist and weld a piece of metal together. So I had that same instance. And then with the Grambling Tiger, this was one of the largest pieces. It was created in ZBrush, and then I created an STL file, and I sent it to a company that mills out. I have several companies, one which is across the border, and another one is Synapsis, and they do most of my milling in foam. So with a press of a button and much communication back and forth, they figured out what size to make this and how to mill it out. And unlike 3D printing, which is an additive process. CNC milling is a subtractive process, so it carves away the foam, and sometimes they'll leave a little bit of gap in between there so that they'll mill it out a little bit more than is necessary, ideally, so I can add clay to it. So I added clay to this. I put together these many pieces of foam, and I'll tell you, that thing was heavy in foam. And they did have an internal armature that helped me to put it together. And then we put a wax over it and then a clay over it and did the final detail, and then went through the traditional process of bronze casting. And this process is all documented in the book. But because I had a 3D file, we could then reduce it down to the 6 or 8 inches that y'all reduced it down to for the show in Burbank, which is incredible because that is a really wonderful thing to be able to do, to have this small piece and 3D printed. I'm also going to now take that piece, and the schools want to have, I do a lot of things for schools, and they want to have smaller pieces that they can sell in their gift shop. I will probably take this and make it into a bas relief, which for those people who don't know is kind of like a tiger that's a flat piece of something coming out of the clay instead of a totally 3-dimensional piece. And the reason for that is because I'll probably make a keychain or something of that nature that they can sell in their gift stores. So there's a lot of different aspects that the technology will help me in creating these things that I can make money off of in the future. And it's taking one piece of art and repurposing it for many different things. And I'm really surprised. I mean, the detail on the small print of the tiger was really great.
Oh yeah, it was terrific. I mean, you talked a little bit about your ailment with your hands or what, and how this technology helps you. But just if you could tell us a little bit about how you discovered 3D technology in the first place. So was it a result of looking for something because of the condition of your hands, or did you discover it some other way? I mean, how did you first get into it?
Well, my husband is a 3D guy, and so I married into it, I guess. And he's written several books on Carrera and that type of thing, and so it was his suggestion to get into the technology when I was losing the use of my hands. Of course, now with the surgery and with the many interns that I use, I can continue to sculpt. But again, I think it was with my husband's influence and then having that happen to my hands that was the two pivotal things. And then the other thing was that because I was having trouble with my hands, and I thought, what if I can't sculpt anymore? What happens if I've lost my career? Well, I could teach, but I hadn't finished my graduate studies. So I went back to school, and because I was already a master sculptor, they wouldn't let me study sculpting. So I told them, well, can I design my own program around 3D technology and incorporating it in the traditional studio? And they said, well, certainly, that sounds like a great program. So that's what I did, and I probably created one of the first graduate studies in 3D technology and fine art.
Oh, speaking of the fine art and 3D technology, your book, I think it's titled 3D Technology and Fine Art and Craft. Is that right? Yes. Tell me a little bit about why you're writing this book, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about the content of it too. But what inspired you to write the book?
I think my own journey into the 3D technology, because there was some things, because I was doing also, I had to record all this for my thesis for school. I in 2007 had written an article in Sculptural Review about CNC milling and scanning. So I was kind of into it back in 2007, and then went through my thesis. When I started to do my studies, I started to take note of some of the things that were happening. And I think that some of the things that were happening within me were different from those people who were using computer graphics or computers. And that I had a very difficult time. If, for example, when I go into my studio and I sculpt, and when I was working on the tiger, there was the part where the tail comes into the lower part of the body, the back part of the body, and it was in foam, and so I carve on that foam and I sand that foam to get it just the way I want. And there was a point where I actually went up to the piece, walked up to this huge tiger, and put my hand on its lower back and started to feel it, and I noticed my eyes were closed. And then I said, okay, I've got it correct. So I have trained myself so much throughout the years of sculpting that I sculpt by touch and feel, and that is much a part of what I'm doing as the sculpting part, is looking at it. So when you are then taking me and putting me into a computer, there's a whole nother world in there, and I've lost my ability to touch it. I've lost a sense that is very powerful for me. And it's also very interesting that I don't really feel ownership of a piece, or there's certain stages of the process using digital technology that I will feel ownership of a piece, but it's usually after I have it in my hand. And I'm not the only artist to say that. So there are some psychological and social things that I had to deal with, but there were also some perfectly legitimate things like dealing with navigation in a 3D program. I tell you what, there was one point where I was working with a software program in the beginning, and there was something wrong with my computer, and if I pressed a certain button and I tapped on my Cintiq, it flipped the whole sculpture upside down. And I remember going up to my husband and saying, I don't care how often I sculpt downstairs, this never happens in the traditional studio. I've never had a sculpture flip upside down. But there are advantages to working in the computer as well. When you're working downstairs in a studio, my studio is downstairs and my office is upstairs. When I'm working downstairs in the studio, I have to crawl under things and through things, and I have to be like this acrobat on my back with, it's just amazing what you have to do to try to get to something, to be able to sculpt it or flip the sculpture upside down. But in the computer, I just hide something, and then I work on it, and I can flip it upside down in the computer. So there are advantages to both, and I think that's other things that I've had to deal with in weighing them. But I think also as I progress, there are other things that I'm finding about this technology that are very important. And one of the things is that I've just written in the scanning chapter is the documentation of your work. At this point, there are some pieces that I create that that the technology is not to the point where it can create what I would want, the way that I would want it, in the medium that I would want it. But I can guarantee you that it will one day. And therefore, if I have 3D scans of my art, my fine artwork, I end up giving this as an inheritance to my child, who can then produce and reproduce and repurpose my artwork in any way, shape, or form. At this point, her inheritance is I have the rights to pour, 10 Grambling tigers, as long as none of them are in Louisiana. And she has the rights to do that. But molds deteriorate, So there are many more aspects to the 3D technology than just what you would see in a computer graphics conference for us who are fine artists and using it as a craft and a fine art. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So is your sense that other fine artists or studio artists out there, how many of them are, familiar with the 3D technology and are actually taking that journey? Do you suspect like you are, or I guess the reason you're writing the book is to help them better understand it. So I guess what you're just the fact that you're publishing the book is it's sort of an underserved market, in that perhaps they there aren't very many fine artists who work in studios, like you're saying, who are also doing things like scanning their work and working in 3D. Various softwares and things like that. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what sort of need is out there among all, colleagues or people that are fine artists such as yourself?
I think there's more and more need. I think that you're finding that the colleges are having interdisciplinary programs so that they're merging the technologies with the art. And 3D technology does go over many different disciplines: industrial design, architecture, art, medicine, over, so as you know, just by your conference. And so these things are, because it is so interdisciplinary, it goes into a lot of these different fields. And I think you're finding less boundaries between things these days, especially in the arts and in art education. So I think with an art education and STEAM, incorporating science, technology, engineering, art, and math, is a very good place for this book because of the tutorials and the things that are in it. It helps the students to understand. So it's not just for fine artists. It's also for those graphic artists who have their work stuck in a computer and don't really know how to get it out. And if I get it out, what do I do with it? Or what are some of the other things that can happen with the art? In the fine art realm, I would say, and I think other artists would agree, that CNC milling has been out there much longer than the 3D printing, and has been used by artists for a longer time, as well as other things like laser cutting and that type of thing. So I think that it's being used, and there's many more things out there, and many more artists that are out there using it. The foundries, and this is a whole section in the book. The foundry, the lost wax method of bronze casting has changed very little in hundreds and hundreds of years. And now what you're going to be seeing, I believe, is you're going to see an infiltration of these 3D processes. So there's a whole section on the Foundry of the Future in every area where 3D technology is infiltrating this process along the way and the results of it, and some of the exploration and the experiments that people are doing with it, which is really quite fascinating.
Goodness, your answer was so much more articulate than the way I posed the question. I have to say, a great answer. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the artwork that's featured. Are you presenting in the book artwork from other artists, or your own artwork, or both? And some of your stuff, some of the stuff that I've seen that you've produced is really inspired. And I'm just kind of curious what sort of artwork your readers will find in the book when you publish it.
I think that's a really great question, and I'm really excited to be able to answer that question, because I have found that there are people who have gone before me, and we're talking about who've been around for a while and have been using this technology and have been following it, and they have really been paving the way for many of us other artists who are coming along. And when I listen to their stories, because they've had to deal with is this really art? Is it manufacturing? Are you cheating? This isn't real. Those type of things. For a long time, this type of art, or art that was created with 3D technology, was never even allowed in a gallery. So there was this real cliquish thing, and that these people have pushed through. And so the art that is in the book is really some fascinating and wonderful art from both very seasoned artists who have been doing this for a really long time, and I'm hoping to feature a section of those artists particularly, and then other artists who are exploring and doing some incredible stuff with the technologies. They're creating some incredible artwork. And the coolest part is that many of them share their tips and tricks with CNC milling and 3D printing and scanning and pushing the limits. And that's what I'm looking for, those people who are pushing the limits. Because if I can display how others are crossing those boundaries, pushing the limits of it, of what the technology can do, then I think that sparks that creative seed in every artist or every creative person that reads this to go, let me see how I can do this. And I think that is one of the coolest things about this technology, is because in a lot of ways you are on the ground level. And if you do something, it is new and different. For example, there's one artist who's doing some scanning, and instead of, because when you do 3D scanning, you want everybody to sit perfectly still and scan their body. But she allows the movement. And then she takes that and she creates those into bronzes, and they look like something like an artifact that you would dig up from the ground, because that noise that most people wouldn't like in that art has become a part of the art. And so it's very interesting to see how everyone is using this technology to come up with their own artwork. Another artist had a cancer, and instead of as an artist might want to do, she wanted to explore further what her cancer would look like. So she actually took her scan and made art out of her cancer, out of her tumor. And by doing this and showing this in an art show, a physician walked up and said, this art, this scan, this 3D model is telling us something that we have never looked at before. And here you go. Here's the interdisciplinary thing. And so now a group of doctors are actually exploring and reviewing her scans, to her 3D models, to see how that,
Wow. Yeah.
So it's fascinating. Every turn I'm finding new artists, and I'm so excited to be able to put them in. And it's interesting because I've been pitching this book to my publisher for 5 years, saying this book is needed, this book is needed. And then just this past year, 3 other books similar to this book have come out. So I must be on the right track because other people are doing it.
Well, you must be. I got to say, it sounds like a great read so far. But you've talked about the Foundry. I think you have Foundry chapter scanning. Tell us a little bit else about the structure of the book or various chapters. What else is in there other than these examples you've given us of the artwork?
Well, we have a scanning chapter. We have a CNC milling chapter. There's a 3D printing chapter. There's several tutorials that walk you through some processes that individuals can try so that they can get their hands into everything. And there's the Foundry of the Future. There's something called there's a whole thing about those social and psychological things that the traditional artists who are getting into it have to deal with. And then there's a primer, because to be perfectly honest, and this may sound funny to those people who have been in graphics, but I didn't know what a poly was, when I started out. I didn't know that. I didn't know what face normal was, or I had an artist recently that I worked through this process so that she could enlarge her artwork. And I said, do you have enough memory? She says, I don't have any idea how to figure out if I have enough memory in my computer. And, or what a graphics card is, or what, so there's a primer in there for artists who don't know those things so that they can, be led through that whole mass labyrinth of things that they need to know. And then I think the thing is that this book is a it's a handbook for those people who want to realize their artwork in physical form. So there's vendors listed, there's software listed, there's everything in there that if you wanted to do these processes, you'd have everything at your fingertips. You wouldn't have to be going and searching on the internet for, trying to figure out how to do it. Everything would be right there.
It sounds terrific. When are you going to publish it? When will it be available?
Well, I told my publisher that I might be asked to come back to the 3D Printing World Expo in Burbank in February, end of January.
Yeah, end of January.
So that's our target date. So we'll see it January 2015 at the 3D Printer World Expo in Burbank. We'll have to do a book signing.
Make sure you make the deadline. Well, I have to say, we'll really look forward to seeing it and reading it and telling our subscribers about it as well, because it sounds like a fantastic book, and we'll be happy to let them know when it's out, and whether it's at our show or on our website or what have you. So
thanks, and I hope that once we do have this book out, that you're going to start seeing lots of new art for your art shows, for your conferences, and we've got some really special pieces planned. Which we can't really say right now. You have to get the book, but there's a really exciting piece that we're doing that's pretty pushing the technology pretty far, and we're excited about presenting it. It's going to be a tutorial in the book, and if all goes well, it will be a piece in your art show come February.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Gosh, thanks so much for taking the time.
And I
really appreciate speaking to you.
Thank you. And so when is the Seattle conference?
August 22nd and 23rd.
Of this year?
Yes, at the Hyatt Bellevue.
So do you expect a whole different crowd at that one that you did than in Burbank? Is it regional?
No, we think it'll be similar. It'll be very similar. Heavy studios, both gaming and entertainment, film industry. So a lot of people involved with those in those kinds of businesses, and artists that work there, and independent artists, all the way from Vancouver down to Portland. I'm sure. Actually, our last event had people from 21 different countries. So I expect we'll have a similar results in that there's a certain international flavor too. But for the most part, there'll be attendees. Many attendees will be from the Northwest, and all kinds of small businesses, educators, artists, and just general hobbyists and tech savvy consumers that want to learn more about it.
And the Burbank conference, January, what date?
29th through 31st.
Well, it was a great event. I encourage people to attend.
Well, you made it better, so look forward to have you. We're looking forward to have you again. having you again when it shows up, and also if we can get that art piece that you're hinting at, if that's ready by the show, that would be fabulous. So
I'm excited about it. Very excited about it.
Oh, that's fine. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you. You have been listening to the Art and Technology Podcast. You can find these podcasts at digitalsculpting.net or on iTunes. Please check back with us next time to hear some more of our guests from the 3D Technology and Fine Art and Craft book.